We are live. This is a breaking market update. I am your host, Bill Noble. So, welcome to Black Monday, or so they say. We will go over that. We'll go over crypto. We'll go over the bond market. We'll definitely do some live TA and give you some levels to keep an eye out because I'm sure today will be a fluid day. All right, welcoming Banks 911 because we jumped on the stream super early today because because it's that kind of market. All right, let's start. So, first of all, I was a college student when Black Monday happened. Black Monday was Black Monday because the market started to go down. Stock market had been going down for like a month. And there was a trade-related catalyst, but when everyone panicked, there were no circuit breakers, right? There was no trading halts like they have today for people to take a breath. So stocks went down 25%. Retail couldn't really sell because, their brokers had to wait in line at the office with stacks of paper tickets that had to be typed and wired to the floor. So you had illiquidity, lack of liquidity, no online trading, no computers, no internet. You had orders all going to the exchange floor. Yeah, they did. I believe they may have had NASDAQ back then, but everything was done at the stock exchange floor. So you did have a trade issue there. You did have interest rates too high, right? Greenspan was all talking tough about inflation. Rates were too high, and that was it. Okay. So in that case, you had a 25% decline in one day, made international headlines. Now, in this case, obviously there are catalysts, right? This trade deal looks like rage. It doesn't look scientific at all. It just looks like slap tariffs on everybody. Now, honestly, I don't think this is about trade. I don't. Like as soon as the tariffs hit, you had the Treasury Secretary on with Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson's father was something called Voice of America from our intelligence community. And I wouldn't doubt that, Tucker can get a phone call and be on the phone or be interviewing a government official like that. Why do you have the Treasury Secretary talking about tariff? What does the Treasury Secretary normally talk about? Cash balances in the government's account, government shutdowns, issuing bonds, maybe talk a little bit about interest rates and the currency. Tariffs? That's like State Department. Maybe economists from the Fed. I don't know. Not the Treasury Secretary. This is not about tariffs. This is about creating an environment where there's demand for U.S. bonds because of massive uncertainty. Now, this morning, the danger for legacy and the eventual benefit for crypto, per an Arthur Hayes article, is that their stunt to create uncertainty, which lowers interest rates, which creates demand for government bonds, of which we have to sell $9 trillion of this year. So create uncertainty, refund the government, eventually get interest rates lower, and then maybe renegotiate some trade deals. But they wouldn't do anything this clumsy, this ridiculous, without a catalyst that no one knows. Now, as Arthur Hayes says, and it's actually backfiring right now, right? Like stocks were down and bonds were doing great, and interest rates were falling, and then bonds reversed, meaning there's some big seller out there in treasuries, not some big buyer. Confidence in the dollar, confidence in treasuries, confidence in stocks. is falling, right? Consumers are suddenly panicking about losing their jobs. You know, it's very problematic for confidence. Confidence. Okay, what does this mean for equities? And then we'll get to what does it mean for crypto. Now, for equities, tech stocks per Lux Algo are probably oversold, right? In other words, it can make a new low from last night. You can have stock indexes down 7%. That's tech stocks. Now, the overall stock market, the S&P, does have 15% downside, theoretically. You know, and guys like Kramer, who are employed by, you know, liberal-leaning news media outlets, you know, was calling for Black Monday last night. Now, Black Monday was Black Monday because nobody was ready for it, and it was a shock. Even Kramer talked about how the fact that, you know, they were selling and they felt like they were idiots prior to the crash. They're like, oh, you know, we're selling the low. Okay. Always have prudent risk management. And Kramer says he remembers it by the day. I was in college at the time when the news broke, not following markets, and I called my father and thought I was going to have to come home from college, that it was literally the end of the world. That's what it felt like. In this particular case, it seems we've announced the end of the world. Now, I would not doubt, with the way this is developing, if two things happened. One, if the move basically happened overnight and the Fed was going to put high-powered money in the system to stop this from being a disaster. Two, they let it be a disaster because these circuit breakers, these trading halts, these things that they have, there is no circuit breaker in the last hour. They have them throughout the day, like you can go down 5%, 7%. And then in the last hour, they just kind of let it go. So you could have something insane at the end of today. You could, right? Because, you know, they're panicking in corporate bonds. They're panicking across the board. And, you know, based on numbers, you know, a recession is all but guaranteed according to the market right now. According to the market right now. Personally, I think by the end of today or early tomorrow, we will have reached peak hysterics, particularly since people have gotten short. Commodity trading advisors have dumped all their longs and reversed the short in legacy. Now, to crypto. All right, so if people lose confidence in stocks, bonds, dollar, that's bullish gold, Bitcoin. Can alts survive? Maybe, right? You can have extreme volatility in alts. We've already seen it. I mean, ETH is currently retesting the high from the 2017 bear market. The equivalent level in Bitcoin is like 20K. Just so you know how down in the mouth ETH is. So how much more damage can they do there? I don't know, right? I know that you have a legacy set up where Bitcoin winds up the winner. And I don't think there's going to be anywhere to trade AI after this except in the crypto space. Now, Friday, we had a great time watching Bitcoin do well as stocks melted down. Sometimes when you over-celebrate outperformance, you get smoked. That's kind of what happens. That's kind of what happens here. So the net is the problems in legacy are, you know, if they get worse, Bitcoin goes with it to 72 and then comes back. If we've seen it, I think Bitcoin can go up hard. We'll see. We'll see. It's going to be a wild day, but you know, 1 minute Kramer is saying it's Black Monday, and then he's on the tape today telling everyone not to panic. I would prefer he would say it's Black Monday, to be honest with you, because, you know, retail was buying stocks last week in mass, and they were exit liquidity for hedge funds who were getting margin called or liquidated in crypto terms. And there may be more of that today. You don't know. Now, one thing you may not know is this whole thing got started on geopolitical news out of the Middle East. Okay. I know a lot of guys. I know a lot of guys talking about how, this turns into like World War III, particularly since we've done a lot of posturing over there by sending a huge military contingent to the Gulf, to the Persian Gulf. I believe that a lot less, and I believe more that you could have some level of panic in equities, maybe some panic in Bitcoin or crypto, but it looks like the damage in crypto got done. It either got done overnight or everybody's going to have one last heave on the close today. All right, we'll go over the news. We'll go over this tariff stunt. Let's welcome who's here. All right, so Banks 911, Chris, Old Smoky, Tango FN, Horace C, oh no, BCS, Krispy Kreme, Zepedas, Crypto Scam. Somebody DM Alexandra over there in Europe. Okay, let's go over what news we got. Let's go. All right, so JP Morgan says worst case scenario for S&P is 4,000. They must be watching the show. I have a Lux Algo level. That's the Lux Algo discount zone in S&P. Okay, this is S&P futures. This is the discount zone at 4,000. That's roughly 18% from where we are right now. So that's your Black Monday, right? That's what they're saying. Everybody has to call for a recession now in legacy. Everyone has to lower their price target. I think the only reason why you would not see that is because tech stocks, even though they were in a tighter range, they're at their discount zone. Now, of course, tech stocks wildly overowned, wildly overvalued. Retail's going to try to buy the dip. And, if this becomes the first instance that I've ever seen where something goes through its discount zone, then you will have Black Monday, right? If you have some kind of nonsense where S&P does blow out 20%, I have to figure at that point that that's the chance to buy crypto. I'm saying, right? In other words, I've talked about how one day equities will go lower and then equities won't necessarily come back, but crypto will, right? And the case for Bitcoin, and the case, as I always say, to get outside the system is so compelling. Okay, so this is what happened last night. This got it started. Like 5 minutes after this happened, the market tanked. So somehow, some way, these defeated groups, in that area next to Israel, launched some kind of rocket attack, which is unbelievable because Israel has virtually wiped out that whole section of the Middle East. So somebody's trying to start World War III. Stock market's down. They got America teetering. So yeah, why not? Now, I don't know if the Orange Man is going to let this go unanswered. He's meeting with the head of Israel today. The thought of this and war at the same time, that's your black swan, right? That's your black swan. Okay. So one of the things that Arthur Hayes is saying, it's the end of U.S. Treasuries and to a lesser degree, stocks as the global reserve asset. Okay. If the U.S. current account deficit is eliminated, then foreigners do not have dollars to buy stocks and bonds. Like one of the things that's great about, people having dollars out there from trade with us is they turn around and they buy our debt. Well, if they trade less with us, they have less demand for dollars, right? And if they don't have dollars, they don't buy treasury bonds. So Arthur Hayes is making this point where, hey, bro, this thing could epically backfire. Okay? Epically backfire. It's particularly on a tactical basis. So, if you wake up one day, maybe it's not today, right? And they have really screwed up legacy by shocking the system, by doing this brute force tariff thing. They could have done the tariff thing by directly going after the Chinese rather than, just sort of like dropping this on everybody. So, undermining confidence in stocks and bonds is extremely possible. Okay. This is another economics guy saying that, in emerging market countries, polite word for that. That's polite for the third world. When you have problems with the government financing itself and a recession, people dump the bonds of the country. Interest rates go up, not down. Now, that's not happening this morning. We're pricing in large numbers of rate hikes. Like the black swan isn't that equities go down. The black swan is that equities go down because people sell bonds rather than buy bonds, right? You're supposed to buy bonds when things get uncertain. And it's just really hard to see how anything could get more uncertain. More to the point, this is really easy to see. Like if the orange man destabilizes everything and the whole world gets more uncertain, if you're a CEO, are you going to build the factory? Are you going to commit capital? Are you going to hire a bunch of people? You know what I'm saying? Like everyone's assuming that, 20, literally, that's the number, 20,000 factories are going to get built over here. Okay, well, I don't know if we got the labor for that, one. And two, CEOs are going to be like, oh my God, dude, you got to be kidding me. My stock's getting wrecked, right? And I don't know what's happening, right? 1 minute we were like, make America great again in January. 3 months later, it's like 60% chance of a recession. So again, this could backfire. It is backfiring. It is backfiring right now, right? Because gold went down and then reversed up. Bonds, interest rates went down and then went back up again. So, okay, this is the case for Bitcoin. This is it, right? And MicroStrategy. Okay, so Israeli Prime Minister meets with the president tomorrow to negotiate a tariff deal. Whatever. Everybody's got to negotiate a tariff deal. Everyone's going to get told to buy treasuries. Okay, national emergency to increase our competitive edge. Bro, the national emergency is that they got to issue $9 trillion. Matter of fact, it's actually hard to believe that anyone believes that this is about trade. If it was solely about trade, they would have gone directly after the Chinese massively, which a lot of people would have supported. Because, the Chinese, we've been in some sort of like cold-ish war with them. That's a fact, right? They're hostile to us. So if they're hostile to us and you went after them, that's understandable. But he went after everybody. It looks like rage is what it looks like, or panic. And I continue to believe it's a panic tax hike. It's destabilizing. It's risky, but it's really about how do we get people to buy treasuries? Like people want treasury bonds when you create fear. So, yeah, he didn't want the stock market to go to zero, but if you're going to have demand for bonds, you need fear. You need lower interest rates, and the only way to get lower interest rates in this environment is to take down tech stocks and have fear. A market crash was not in the orange man's plan. What are they going to say? President announces that he's glad he wrecked the markets because World Liberty Financial is long crypto, short equities. Are you kidding me? Who comes up with this stuff? Okay, here we go. Can't stay off the tape. So the orange man said oil prices down, interest rates are down, food down. There is no inflation. Right. There is no inflation because you're about to have unemployment. That's the trade-off. Okay. This is the fact that big business abuser China, whose markets are crashing, just raised its tariffs by 34%. Okay. So you see the orange man pivot to try to make this more about China. They should have done that in the beginning. All right. I think you get the point. Truflation's real-time U.S. inflation gauge is now at 1%. That's it. That's it for inflation. You kill NVIDIA, you kill inflation. Now you have to start worrying about unemployment because, people who are worried about their jobs, like those surveys are off the charts, right? Off the charts. All right. So antivirus. Wow. Everyone panicked. 1.6 million market cap as they released the decentralized cross-chain mixer. I couldn't believe it. This was Black Monday for me. That's what it felt like. Okay, so there are guys arguing that, tariffs could be bad, but maybe not. I didn't get to go deep into that thread. Now, for your Monday morning cringe, Mark Cuban says, don't sell, it will come back. But I don't know how long it will take. Yeah, it came back in 87. It took like over a year. And there was a double bottom. So it was like down in October, up. The end of the world decline was at Christmas. And then the Fed cut rates, and then it slowly started moving up again, right? I continue to believe stocks are in a range. This is just we're setting a bigger range, One lesson from FTX is you got to be really careful when people tell you not to get upset, not to worry about it, that everything will be okay. It's fine. We're all going to make it. I want to see everybody going, oh my God, it's going to zero. Then you have a bottom. When you have this, I don't know, man. Kathy Wood buys Coinbase stock. I don't disagree that crypto equities are a great buy. I just don't know that it's Coinbase. I think it's MicroStrategy or the Bitcoin miners, right? I don't know what kind of public participation you're going to get in crypto from here. I don't. Now, it should be huge if crypto turns around and goes higher. So I get what Kathy's doing. She's like, let's buy crypto. Let's buy crypto equities. I'm just not sure that's the right one. Okay, so Bitcoin futures, 58 million liquidated. Longs took the heavier hit, obviously. Despite price dropping 10%, the liquidation size is modest, all right, suggesting limited leverage chasing upside. So that's really interesting that, people who were long were not levered long. Probably because everyone's been liquidated. Sailor, volatility is a gift. And you know what? He's right. I mean, I didn't think you were going to see Bitcoin below the cost of production. And then there's guys talking about 72, which, you might see on a terrible close today. Right. I mean, this could be generational, especially if you have some sort of mass panic in equities. The orange man approval rate collapses, and then he's got to walk some of this back or make it specifically about China. Right. There was a Bank of America headline last week that said, well, if equities go to 4,800, you better buy everything if his approval rating falls. Okay, bro. Well, it went to 4,800 overnight, and I can only imagine where his approval rating is, particularly with crypto people, our market people. It must be 40%, must be zero. All right. MicroStrategy didn't sell. They're raising billions to buy more. Yeah, dude, these headlines are out daily and the market continues to go lower. The problem with crypto is that good news didn't make it go up. So I think in order for Bitcoin and crypto to go up, you need bad news from legacy, which, is kind of unfolding as we speak. Right? It's very clear that you are going to get no upside in the Magnificent Seven. That's just over. You got to go looking for returns somewhere else. Bitcoin MicroStrategy could be a start. And then I think it's going to be AI and DeFi maybe after that. Okay, so this is making fun of like Ray Dalio's curve about, this is the Dutch Empire, the British Empire, the U.S. Empire. We've already topped and we're turning in, we're headed lower. And, Bitcoin is the orange line that they insert. Bitcoin rising. And this is not wrong. This is not wrong. Like when this is over, whether it's over at S&P 4,000 or whether it's going to be, like a puke and then a midday reversal. I just don't think equities bottom on a Monday. I think you got a much better shot at a bottom on Tuesday. But even in this case, man, the case for Bitcoin as a better play versus stocks and bonds. I mean, do you realize what happens if like the general public goes to a 10% allocation? Because they got done buying QQQ. I don't know, man. I don't know. They all were exit liquidity for hedge funds. So, if it gets wrecked today, I think it's a huge opportunity because the stock selling, especially if it's big, right? Stocks go down 10%, you probably have a bottom tomorrow. And then you're out looking for where you can get involved in Bitcoin. Okay, I hate this. So, Bitcoin is not moving in lockstep with the stock market. That was before last night. Okay, it's starting to look less and less like a risk-on asset. We're in new territory. Be careful about celebrating outperformance. However, I do think that once all this stops, Bitcoin can go up massively, whereas equities can, I don't know, just do a normal trading bounce. It'll probably be a big trading bounce. But, Bitcoin could start a 1-month uptrend once this stops, right? Okay, so there's a great presentation out there. It's not just Michael Saylor, but it's the CEO of MicroStrategy out there talking, aggressively. And I do like this. Bitcoin is freedom from corporations, right? Outside the system, way outside. Okay. Bitcoin dominance can go up a lot. Okay. Also note if Bitcoin dominance breaks 75%, it's expected to climb rapidly according to Dynamics. It's at 63% today. All right. So this chart I would also describe as not wrong. One of the things that we have to admit today, particularly after what happened to ETH, is, you got to be really specific about altcoins in general, right? Especially if ETH just cracks, right? Like if ETH doesn't hold at the 2018, 2017 high, then you got to start asking yourself, hey, what about my position? And then the second thing is when it turns around, the first leg could be all about Bitcoin. So when this stops, the big rally could be Bitcoin, and then it might switch into altcoins. But this guy is right to bring up Bitcoin dominance. Because if everybody just goes, oh my God, and all the capital on the planet floods into this, Bitcoin's going to outperform everything. And I would never want to see a world where Bitcoin went up and altcoins actually continue to go down. I can't even think about that. But, Bitcoin could go to 110 and the rest of the market could just sit around. Because again, when people allocate money in legacy, they're going to allocate to Bitcoin. And that's coming because you can't buy stocks, you can't buy treasuries, you can't buy corporate bonds. That stuff's just melting down. Like the fear is, maybe overdone soon, but it is extreme and it is real. And the only thing that's going to stop it is you're going to have to walk the whole thing back or focus specifically on China. ETH versus Bitcoin at the 2020 low. Okay. Again, this type of thing scares me. Charles Hopkins talking about, the market is broken, but, the bull market will be spectacular. Yeah, dude, it might be spectacular, but, we have to deal with the whole legacy convulsion first. And, I mean, spaceship cringe is a good, counterintuitive tweet to get attention. Maybe not today. Right. And he's right. I mean, he's right about Bitcoin. He is. He's right about Bitcoin. He's right that some of these, some layer ones will move stable coins around. Right. ETH and Bitcoin DeFi is coming. It's just, like I said, where's your pain tolerance? Where's the low? But this guy is right in the sense that, Bitcoin upside could be much bigger than anyone thinks because the Magnificent Seven are done. This is kind of funny looking at Vitalik and CZ. This looks like a classroom, right? I mean, normally, I don't know what kind of event this is, but I'm used to seeing Vitalik and CZ on these like huge stages, right? Now, some indications that fear and legacy is getting to an extreme, right? These red indicators show that immediate fear is greater than fear out 3 months. So whenever immediate fear gets crazy, as denoted by these red lines, sometimes it can end. A Tuesday bottom feels right to me. It feels right to me because, again, they'll have a recession fully priced in at that point, whether it's Black Monday or it isn't. And I think even if it is Black Monday or Black Tuesday, you'll have a huge move down in stocks and then it'll come straight back. Like, because I've seen this before as well. Like everyone's talking about 1987. 1997 was down, 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 5% down, and then all the way back. And that was a major bottom. Could be the same thing in crypto. Could be the same thing in equities, right? You could have 7, 8, 10% down, today or tomorrow or both. Then you might get this like V-shaped recovery. Like equities, if we look at NVIDIA, I'll spare you the story, but equities make rolling tops and V bottoms. Some kind of V bottom is coming. It's just a question of how much damage they're going to do in the short term. Okay, ETH is the same price it was in 2018. Frightening. Goldman cuts GDP forecast. See, the doom begets more doom, right? Nobody can say, yeah, we're leaving our base economics case alone because we don't think there'll be mass layoffs or whatever. Nobody can say that. They all have to have the research manage price action. Okay, so $1 billion in crypto liquidated, European stocks all down 10%. This is undoubtedly part of the plan. These foreign equity markets, like if our market's going down 15%, these other markets, they don't, I don't think they have the liquidity to absorb massive selling, right? And if those markets continue to go down, they may wind up selling the only liquid thing on the planet, which is S&P futures. So the deeper the decline in these foreign equities, the more likely it is that you have panic hedging in S&P, which is why I'm guessing the bottom is not today. Maybe it's tomorrow. Okay. So the French want all French companies to not do business with us. Interesting, right? You'd be thinking the smart people, I think, are the ones who are calling up the orange man and be like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this, right? Let's not nuke everything that we have. Let's not nuke everyone's economy. I'll buy treasuries and you leave me alone. Okay. This guy wants something different. Okay. So the Bitcoin hash rate continues to go up. The Bitcoin hash rate goes up and price goes down. Normally that's not the way it is. But please don't underestimate what can happen with Bitcoin on the upside when this all stops. Okay, Hang Seng down 13%. That's the stock index out of Hong Kong. Reflection of the, Asian economy. MicroStrategy down 10% this morning. It's pre-market. Right. All of the Magnificent Seven stocks down 5% with NVIDIA and Tesla taking the worst of it. Again, how are you trading AI? Right. Probably not with Fartcoin, but Fartcoin could be like the leader in AI, at least initially. Still think somewhere in this altcoin universe, there are plays for the future. Even if the initial move up is in Bitcoin, something is going to follow. Maybe not alt season, but something is going to follow. Okay. Everybody's making fun of ETH. Okay. Now we have geopolitical news. Okay. The Iranians have just bought 2 tons of gold from the Chinese. Again, one thing I will simply note, back in 2001, you did have a tech stock crash, right? Accounting issues like Enron, and you had a geopolitical event like 9/11. So you did have a geopolitical event in a tech stock crash that actually has happened before. Okay. People are using metal detectors to find gold. Okay. Gold turned around and was bid very quickly. Very, very quickly. Okay. Let's go to TA. Okay. So S&P futures, I don't know. Let's go to a tactical viewpoint. So S&P futures are at their discount zone. You know, you do have mass liquidation. You do have a couple of Lux Algo buy signals. The gap from last night, it looks like it's being filled right now. Right. I don't think stocks bottom on a Monday, but you know, if the whole world is looking for Black Monday, they may not get it. Right. NASDAQ, same thing. These are 89-minute charts, by the way. So on a tactical level, actually, it's kind of funny. Lux Algo is trying to go the other way with this. Interesting. Right. Let's go to 89-minute chart on Bitcoin. Ooh. Right. So let's just label it. And really, I think when it comes to TA, you know, this is what I think you have to use. Now, a temporary bounce. Oh my God, look at this. Well, I guess this was going to happen, so let's talk about it. So the Fed's doing an emergency meeting, and clearly they have screwed up, right? Rates are way too high. They were talking about inflation being a big risk at the last meeting. They're so wrong. They're so wrong. So I don't know what they're going to do, but I do know this. I do know this. I think if they do an emergency rate cut, that could actually create more selling. You'll get this uptick. The orange man will come out and say, thank you very much. And then people might sell going, oh my God, the sky really is falling. I think they should let the market go lower and then do a big cut in May. Right. Come out and say something dovish. I mean, optimally, that's what they would do. Say something dovish and then cut rates big later. Now, if they do a bazooka cut today, wow, right? You know, that's why you got to be a little careful with this Black Monday thing, right? They can put high-powered money in the system. They can stop it. That said, the optics of an emergency rate cut today means there's trouble in the system. Hedge funds are getting liquidated. I actually don't want an emergency rate cut. Now, one of the greatest things that could ever happen is that they would do an emergency rate cut and then crypto would again decouple, do better, or hold, or get a Bitcoin rally. Right. It would be great if, you know, there was a crypto rally off a rate cut that stuck and it didn't stick in legacy. People just sold the rally. Okay. I remember in 2007, right, there was an emergency rate cut in December of 2007, and we all looked at each other and we're like, oh no, oh God, right? They just told you something's terribly wrong, right? So, okay, everyone wants an emergency rate cut until they get one and they figure out what that means, unless it's like the bazooka, right? Unless they're doing like 100 basis points. Because again, inflation is at 1%. You have rates at 4% and inflation at 1%. I mean, those guys at Trueflation, you know, they actually redeemed themselves, I think. Okay. So Bitcoin almost unchanged for this trading day. ETH back above 1,400, 1,500. Yay. ETH. Hard. 1,400. Last time I was saying to myself, well, it'd be kind of funny if ETH went retested the 2018 high. Remind me never to say these things, right? I mean, ETH is still in its discount zone, but it's a wide discount zone, right? 1200 to 1500. I don't know, man. I can't come up with a rationale to sell Bitcoin at these levels. I can't. And MicroStrategy down 10%. If MicroStrategy is down 10% and the shorts push it and can't break it, that's meaningful. And you're looking for meaningful signals, right? Like I can sit here and be like, well, I think this is what's going to happen. Now, if you want to see something I don't really like, I kind of like it, but so in the daily chart of the 4-hour chart of XRP, you have a 9 bottom. Now, 9 bottoms are great if it turns around and goes back up. But if you have some kind of grotesque failed rally, 9 bottoms can trigger, they're not bottoms anymore. They can trigger more downside. Okay, you got one of these things going on, all right, on the daily chart, right? This is what I talk about. You get the 9 bottom, you get the rally, but the rally can't fail, right? And if it fails badly, then you could have 2 weeks in the other direction. This is one of the reasons why I think, whatever I've said in the past, whatever altcoins I want to get involved in, I still want to get involved. But I think you got to be careful about just randomly holding altcoins, just in general. Like if you have a favorite, maybe XRP is your favorite. Maybe you want to pray antivirus holds on. That's what I'm doing. But just having a huge portfolio of generic altcoins, I don't know, man. Not everything, you can evaluate them on the next rally, but you have to be focused on the fact that Bitcoin is what's going to come out of the gate first. Because people in legacy are going to go, oh my God, I'm not doing this anymore. And if the Fed does cut rates and they see Bitcoin going up, like really, if it wasn't for the geopolitical thing, everyone would be talking about, oh, wow, look how good Bitcoin did on Friday. Then they hit this geopolitical news and everybody sold everything, right? Everybody panicked, right? So, okay. You don't want to see a failed rally, and you would love it if it came back just, back to say above $2, right? Solana, can you even look? So on a weekly basis, it's a 9 bottom, but I don't really know where support is. Let's try a Fibonacci retracement. Yeah, I mean, Solana went through the 62% retracement, basically the whole bull market move. So if you go to a 4-hour chart of Solana, right, this looks like a give-up trade, and you just don't want to see a failed rally. That's all, right? Stocks don't normally bottom on a Monday, but if you got stability down at lower levels, a puke tomorrow, that could be it. That could be it, right? No sign of a bottom here on the Solana 90-minute chart. Again, this has been the problem for like a week. It's been hard to find a good DeMark bottoming signal. You just haven't seen it. And even some of the Lux Algo signals, you haven't really seen the big bottom reversal signals. So the range of Bitcoin was 78, 88. So it has to get back above 78. It has to. And, I'm sure you can figure this out. If they try to rally it early in the day and that fails by the end of the day, right? Everyone's going to be like, this sky is falling. Okay. Now, this is a word about risk management, right? ETH was at 2,000 and then ETH was at 1,400. Unfortunately, this is the type of environment where I think with any position, you have to ask yourself, how much more pain can I take? And where's my stop loss level? And if you didn't have these things defined before that, then you might want to say, okay, if Black Monday really is Black Monday, or this thing doesn't stop, Am I just going to sit here and have my capital destroyed, or am I going to make certain moves? Kramer did talk about, I have it somewhere in here, right, where he did talk about the fact that, back in the day, he sold, and they thought that they were selling the low. And I know exactly what he feels like. And I'm sure you feel the same way. But you should make decisions that allow you. No one's going to sleep at night in this environment, but picking up Bitcoin at 72K, taking tax losses, not investment advice, is something that you might consider, particularly if you're long stuff that, you have to search your soul and say, where do I stop the loss? Right? Don't do the deer in the headlights. Even if you just do what I did this, even if you just do one thing, like, okay, what can I not take anymore? I cannot take this. And I made the adjustment. If I sold the low, F it, whatever. I made the adjustment to preserve capital. Okay. All right, people. That's going to be it for today. Stay tuned throughout the day for more updates on this channel and others. I will do everything I can to keep everybody informed. Okay. Stocks don't normally bottom on a Monday. There could be a wick down on the close or a wick down tomorrow. Think you could expect the bottom soon. And if you get one, the rally in Bitcoin could be wonderful. But, you're going to earn your stripes. If this is a bottom, you'll earn your stripes if you're a bull. All right. We'll see you tomorrow.